Hey everyone, Jeff Risden here with the Daily DLP. This one is going to be a little bit narrow focus specialized by popular demand from the Detroit Lions podcast Patreon Slack channel, also some of you on social media, to talk about Seth McLaughlin, who is the newest Lions center. I am a big Seth McLaughlin fan, and I am very happy that the Lions signed him to a future reserve contract. He was a guy who I very much liked in the draft in 2025, someone that I actually got to know a little bit in that process, and he is now a Detroit Lion. The Cincinnati Bengals signed him after the draft last year as an undrafted free agent. He spent most of the year on their practice squad after being activated. So the reason he went undrafted, and pretty much the only reason he went undrafted, was that he tore his Achilles in November of 2024 while playing for Ohio State. He was Ohio State center. Prior to that, he had been Alabama's center. Been a very good one there. It was a very good one for Ohio State as well. And I was a very big fan of his. Last year, in the series that I do annually, and by the way, they're coming on Detroit Lions podcast soon, I do a interior offensive lineman for every round of the draft. I will do a cornerback. I do it for basically every position. Won't do quarterbacks because the Lions are in the market for a quarterback, but that's for another show. When McLaughlin was my fourth round choice for the Lions last year, and in the same column, I pegged Tate Ratledge as their second round pick, and he wound up being that. So, I will just bring it up because I wrote this at Lions Wire, and it's still in their archives. Thank you for keeping that. This is what I wrote at that time in that piece about Seth McLaughlin. The pluses and minuses that he offers, talked about it here, would have been a top 75 pick. Probably that. In hindsight, in retrospect, that's probably optimistic, but I was a big fan, and he was certainly a top 100 player for me if healthy in last draft. And again, 3-year starter at a high level program, played at Alabama, went to Ohio State, high pressure stakes. By the way, pro style offenses at those places as well, which I think helps groom him a little bit for the pressure that's going to come about in the NFL in terms of playing center. Exceptional pre-snap recognition, and this is something that really stood out in watching his film at both Alabama and Ohio State. He understands what the defense is trying to do. He's very good at calling out the defenses, setting up his linemen, calling out the correct scheme, making the proper line adjustments. He's got experience at doing all of that. Fires off the ball, comes out with power, with great hand placement. His hands are never too high. They're never too low. They're right where they need to be in the middle of the shoulder pads. Squares himself up very nicely. Good contact balance. That's where his compact frame sort of comes in. Not super big, but on that. The other thing that really stands out, if he gets rocked back a little bit by a bull rush, his feet reset so quickly. He can square his shoulders and his hips to the target, stay engaged with his hands, not get too wide, not lose his balance and fall backwards or anything like that. Very good at that. These are traits that you want in a center. He was a good one, man. Has a little bit of attitude to his game. We'll play with some snarl, as noted near the bottom of the what I like there. Very good at getting out in the second level and specifically picking off the backside linebacker on a stretch run to the outside. He did that very well at Ohio State, was emerging into doing that at Alabama. Now the cons, and these are rule. Obviously the injury is the big one. He wound up missing his entire rookie season with an injury, which is suboptimal. It's an Achilles. You never know with an Achilles. But as far as what he brought as a college player, he's only a center. And that is something I actually asked him and his family about at the combine. I wound up just happening to sit next to them while we're waiting for a table in Indianapolis at the combine last year. And I wound up talking to him and his dad, and with other folks that were involved in our parties. And he is pretty much a center only, and that does diminish the value a little bit, because what if he doesn't work out at center? Well, then you can't really move him to guard. And some of that is that his arms are short. Some of it is that he's not, especially for the Lions style, he's not a big road grader type of guy. He's not built like Christian Mahogany or Tate Ratledge, who have different builds. They're both bigger dudes. They're both much more naturally strong framed. McLaughlin is more weight room strong. I'm not going to say that he's not country strong, because he is country, but he's not that kind of strong, if you follow where I'm going with that. Did have penalty issues. Also had some snapping issues, and this was more of an issue at Alabama than it was at Ohio State, though we did have a couple at Ohio State of really poorly timed missed snaps. Based on my conversations there in Indy, I feel like he's resolved that. He understood what he did wrong, and was working with correcting that. But it's something to keep in the back of your mind for a guy who has only played center, and he did have some errant snaps. That's not to be overlooked. I'm sure Michigan fans remember his play against Alabama. He had a couple of missed snaps in that one. That's not always on the center, but it's still concerning when you see it. The big thing with him, and as I say that as one of his biggest draft fans and as somebody who is very excited that the Lions got him, I love the fact that they got him and are bringing him into the system. Gets a chance to prove himself. He's the type of person that will not look back from that opportunity. He was a guy that he thought the Lions really liked him in the draft process, and based on how quickly they scooped him up after the 2025 season ended, that sort of validates his take on that. He's a very good schematic fit and very good grit fit for what the Lions want at center. But the Bengals didn't keep him. The Bengals do not have a good offensive line. Ever. Like perennially, since Andrew Whitworth left, and Willie Anderson. And they had some dudes in the Marvin Lewis era, but that's distant past now. The fact that they didn't really try to keep him, or they let him go after looking at him for a year and having him in, that needs to be noted. It needs to be noted that he hasn't played in a year. So while I'm excited that he's in the system, happy that he's going to get a shot, he can't be the only solution. You cannot rely on Seth McLaughlin to be your starting center in 2026. That's irresponsible. Can he compete for it? God, I hope so. But he doesn't need to be the only person competing for that job. Somebody else needs to come in to, if it's a cluster of people, may the best man win. But overall, I'm very happy with the signing. I like what I've seen. I like his prospects. I think he's going to fit in very well. I think Hank Fraley definitely has things that he can work with him. Remember, Hank was a center who didn't necessarily have the longest arms either. I think this is right in his wheelhouse. He does compare somewhat to former Lion Evan Brown. I think that Seth has more push to his game than what Evan did. Evan was a little bit more finesse, but was a quality player for the Lions. If at least McLaughlin can wind up being your OC2 in 2026 and develop into perhaps more than that in 2027 once he's got his legs back under him, another year removed from the Achilles surgery, that's I think when you're going to see him really start to shine, if he can ever shine. So that's my thoughts on Seth McLaughlin. Happy that he's in the system. Love to see him get a shot to start, but he shouldn't be relied upon for anything more than just a roster spot right now as a guy on a futures contract. That's the same way a lot of these guys are. Ahmed Hassanin is also a guy coming back with a lot of potential, a lot to like, but he's on a futures contract. That's sort of the scale of where McLaughlin is as well. So if you're somebody that thinks that, Ahmed Hassanin, because we drafted him and because he's got a lot of fun potential and, looks the part, that's sort of where Seth McLaughlin is. A guy that you're probably not going to count on to make a dent, but has a chance to prove and outplay the futures contract and play himself into hopefully at least a backup center role in 2026 for the Detroit Lions. So we're going to leave this one. This daily is just going to be about Seth. We'll have more coming soon, but until then, Jeff Risden, thanks for watching.